Hello friends and welcome to Figure Study, where there's so many of these things. I just keep getting more of them. I'm sorry, but we're looking at another Korean transforming robot toy. In particular case, Miniforce Croker, I think it's called. I don't know the story behind any of this stuff. All I know is that this appears to be some kind of mount/armor for Lucy or LucyBot. I think Lucy, because I think LucyBot refers to when she's in her transformed mechanized mode. So pretty sure this is Lucy, not LucyBot. But yes, this is weird and awkward because it's a pink, I'm assuming because the name is Croker, Crocodile, with what is basically a pink Power Ranger with cat ears riding on top. It's so strange. I like it, but it's strange. And unfortunately, as you might be noticing, Lucy's up there a little bit awkwardly. That's really kind of the best I can do. There's no real good way to get her sitting in a better spot. I thought it'd be cool to have her sitting more like this and leaning forward, but just the range of motion, it just doesn't work. Her arms cannot reach quite right that way. So yeah, unfortunately, she's got to ride it like she's awkwardly on a snow speeder or something. But that makes this as good a time as any to show Lucy not riding Croker. Again, I think this is Croker. And as a standalone little action figure, she's fine. Her articulation is definitely lacking in some places, which I feel like, she's not the main attraction here. It's this thing. But it would have been nice if she had a little bit more articulation, because as it is right now, it is pretty limited. So just to get that out of the way real quick, the head can swivel. This head was super loose out of the box. I ended up having to open her up and do the paper towel trick. Just wrapped a little bit of paper towel around the entire peg that sits inside the torso and put it back together. So now it rotates, but it's not super loose because the problem is with this thing. I'll get into it later, but basically that was causing problems. So shored that up. For the arms, the shoulders are on ball joints, but you don't really get much in the way of movement, like a little bit of butterfly motion, a teeny tiny bit of out. That is as far as it goes, but you can rotate around. Now there is no bicep swivel either. You get a slightly over 90-degree elbow bend that can also bend backwards, and wrist swivel. I'm assuming this is so that she can rotate her hands and actually grip the handles on Croker there, but I don't know. Bicep swivels would have been nice. More outward motion on the arms would have been nice. No waist swivel either, and there totally could have been some. There is plenty of space for it. They could have even had a swivel up here if it had been engineered slightly differently, but nope. And the hips are on ball joints, so they can swing forward only about that far because everything's constructed in a way that makes it as limited as possible for some reason. I can go back that far, can go out that far, and you get a practically non-existent amount of inward and outward twist because she has no thigh swivels, so you're just stuck with whatever the ball joints will allow. She does have knees, though, that can bend slightly under 90 degrees, I think. Yeah, so that's something. And nothing at the ankles. So yeah, it's a pretty limited action figure, which for what it needs to do, I think is fine. But if she had just a little bit more articulation, she would be just a fun little standalone figure that comes with a giant robot crocodile. I don't know, it just would have been nice. Also, it would have made it easier to get her to sit on this thing a little bit less awkwardly. Anyway, as far as the design of Lucy goes, I think this is actually kind of neat. It's a pretty basic design, but the color separation is nice with the pink in the lower legs and then the black kind of in the midsection and upper legs and black for the hands. I don't know how much of this is accurate to the show design, but I think it looks pretty good. And I also like how the chest plate kind of reflects the crocodile. It's not exact, and obviously this crocodile does not have gold eyes, but it kind of gives that impression. And then the head is like a nondescript Sentai helmet with cat ears, which I actually think is kind of fun. Supposedly, according to KR Brickbot, Lucy does also have a ponytail. I wish that they had included that. But as you can see, she does not have a ponytail for this figure. And the ponytail would have been nice because For the armor mode, it would have helped to keep the head from potentially like moving forward or back in the helmet, but it's a kid's toy. You might also notice this hip is kind of loose. I might need to adjust that later. And of course, there is also that very large purple and silver belt buckle thing, which I'm sure ties into the powers and the ability to armor up or whatever, but I haven't seen the show. She's actually a pretty cool looking little action figure. I just wish she had more articulation. Like, I'm fine with the paint being relatively sparse because the separation between the pink and the black is pretty nice throughout the figure, so even if there needs to be more detail down here, which I could add later myself if I really wanted to, I think it works out fine. It's just that extremely basic articulation that's a bit disappointing, but it's fine. Like I said, I think for what she is, she's still pretty neat. But she is only half the package because we also have this thing, this enormous pink crocodile. I'm assuming crocodile, but it's got more of like an alligator-shaped head. I don't know. And this thing is kind of ridiculous, but I actually do really like it. It takes up a lot of space too. This thing is quite long from nose to tail. The deco is pretty straightforward when you're looking at it from the top. It's just a lot of pink plastic and then a little bit of gold here and there with the blue gold on the head. But then when you're looking at it from the side, you get more because it's got more of like a pink and white two-tone thing going with the pink for the top, white for the underside. There are a few paint apps that you can see from here that do look good, like the gold on the hip and the detailing for the eye, and of course the gold on top of the head. You can also move the jaw up and down. It's not much, but it's something. And again, I might look up references to see if I need to like paint these teeth or something, because I feel like if the teeth were white up here, it would really help to kind of separate things out a bit more. I kind of feel like this probably needs to have paint. I could be wrong. I'm curious to check that out. As for the articulation, that's pretty much all you can really do with Croker. You can just open and close the mouth. You can move the feet, kind of. You can rotate these around and they click a little bit. That's it. Because of the way that this is all held together, these legs do not move any further than that. It's just the toes. The forelegs move a little bit more. You can bring them out if you wanted to, like this. You can also rotate them out a little bit like this if you wanted. They can move here a little bit, and you can rotate them here. But because you can't move the back legs at all, you're pretty much stuck with the more static positioning. So with that out of the way, let's bring Lucy back in here. And you're looking at the camera. And let's move along to size comparisons. Here's everybody with the standard deluxe squad, and I think it's pretty obvious that Croker is, even at this angle, quite a bit larger than a deluxe. And let's readjust this a little bit. Here's everybody with the duck tank. All right, now it's time to get fancy. So let's take Lucy. I'm just going to straighten out the head so she's looking forward. There is something I'm doing with the arms here that I don't believe is required by the directions, but I find it works better to do it this way, and I'll explain why later. But I'm going to move the arms up and tuck them in, kind of like this. And I'm going to put her off to the side. Then grab Croker and start transforming. So we're going to close the jaw, flip back the little handles. And we want to move out these spines and disconnect this entire section from here. So I find the best way to do that is to put a thumb like down here and push up here. And that will unclip this from this section here. We'll do that for both sides. And then lift this off. And this just pegs in, this peg goes in here, and then these bits on either side clip in back here. And this will separate out, it just slides in there. And now we've got accessories that we'll look at later. Now for the rest of it, we want to, as you'd probably expect, straighten out the legs. And from here, you can see how they're angled a little bit. You want to move them out so that they're spread out more like that. Angle the toes. Bring these sections up, and then bring these sections down. Rotate this and push up the claw. And there you got an arm. Bring this down, straighten that out, rotate this, and push up the claw. So there, now we've got this going on. Now in the back, I want to disconnect this gold plate and flip that up, which will allow us to move the gator head down, or Crocker head down. And then these bits will flip up, and these things here will peg into the back. Like that. Now we want to bring this piece, this helmet, up, and it's a little tricky to get it past this section. This is just kind of a pain. You kind of have to move this up and move this down to get things to move past themselves, and it's irritating. Now we can close this off, flip this down, and here we've got Crocker's armor mode. But this is missing something. It is missing Lucy. So we need to put Lucy in the armor. The way to do that is lift up the helmet and pull out this little faceplate. Going to pull this back and move up the head so that we can get Lucy in there. And this is kind of a disappointing aspect of this figure. It's a little bit awkward to get Lucy inside the armor. So we want to keep the arms bunched up like that. Move the legs out, and just kind of bring her in at an angle, and then have her lean back into it. It's just getting like the cat ears past this thing and like getting everything to line up. It's irritating. I really wish they had done something else to get her into the armor because it's so awkward. But put her in the back. She does not peg in or anything. That also would have been nice. Now this is why I wanted to have her arms up like this, because as I bring down the crocodile head, you can see that there is this kind of groove in here, and I want to get the hands kind of in that groove, because as this comes down, it'll push against her hands, and the reason I want to do that is having this pushing against her arms like that keeps her torso solidly in place. It keeps her from shifting around while she's in the armor. So that was a problem that I was having when I first tried to transform all of this and just have her arms down at her sides. She was kind of wiggling around in there. And around back, just want to tuck her feet into the backs of the legs, which are open. And this is another thing, I really wish that they had had something here to kind of keep the legs more solidly in place. Like, I do understand they want to keep them open for vague motion, but like just something like a little lip or something to just keep the heels from popping out would have been nice. After that, I want to bring down the helmet, and it does kind of scrape against the visor V a little bit, so I just kind of push the head back a little bit as I bring that down, then push in the visor for the helmet, close this up, and now we've got Lucy all armored up with Crocker, looking pretty cool, all things considered. There is a little bit of extra stuff I like to do personally, because this is how the instructions show it, and I think it's fine, but I kind of am not a fan of these fin spike things sticking out of the sides, so what I end up doing is, on the back here, I push these in, because that's where they sit in the crocodile mode, and this is fine because there's no forward and backward rotation on the shoulders, so it's not going to block anything. But I fold those in, and these I actually fold in this way, which they're not intended to do that, I don't think, but they will fold that way. And that just cleans it up a little bit more, I think. So that is how I have Lucy in her armor displayed, and this, as I said, it's pretty cool. It's a much bigger mix of colors in this mode too, with a lot more gold on display, and way more white, and a lot less pink, and probably more black. I feel like you're looking at Crocker mostly along the top where it's mostly pink, so yeah, you get more color variation in here. I do have some issues with the proportions though. Primarily the calves, oddly enough. It's got this kind of reverse knee joint thing going, which I don't really understand why it had to be like that. I guess maybe for the transformation to have this folded up like that, but I feel like they could have done something to like move the joint forward or something. I don't know, because the knees don't bend any further than this, so this didn't need to, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of this for what is supposed to be like a humanoid armor mode. And the rest of my issues with this thing are primarily down to just like the joint tolerances and stuff. Like the fact that it's really easy to knock these joints in. The arms, if you bring the arm up and then try to bring it down, it ends up bringing this down instead. So you've got to kind of hold the shoulder pad in place. But again, this does look pretty cool. And I do actually really like the color scheme on this. Something about that pink, black, and gold that just works. And the white does not hurt either. Oh, and one other joint tolerance issue that I'm having is the figure has a tendency to want to lean forward. And I want to lean back a little bit more, but it keeps wanting to sag forward like that, and I just think that's a little bit annoying. I wish there wasn't quite as much play in those hip ratchets, which don't even need to exist, because yeah, you can bring the leg forward, but what purpose is this serving? You don't have knees. You don't have any outward motion. Like, seriously, you can't move outward. You can do this, but that's a transformation joint. So like, what? There's no reason for this to even bend like this. And you've got Lucy's legs sticking out. Those joints don't even need to be there, but they are, and that makes the thing sag a little bit. Getting back to the colors, I do like some of the added gold details that we get too, like the gold around what I guess counts as knees, and the gold trim in the shoulder pads. And like I said, the black, gold, pink, white, that's a really nice color scheme. Black and gold look great together. Taking a look at the helmeted head, it's a neat helmet. I kind of like the ridged mohawk thing that's going on there, and I also like that it's the pink helmet with black around the sides, the gold on top, and a little bit of that turquoise in the center gem. And they even painted the faceplate, which is kind of hard to see, but they painted the blue plastic for the faceplate so that you got some pink and black to kind of bring the look of the helmet together. And it's a really nice detail. It's a nicely shaped helmet, and I do think it's cool that you can lift the helmet and the faceplate up, but it's a little bit difficult to see Lucy's face from inside there. I know there were versions of this, like not this specific figure, but like they had these kind of armor sets before in other Miniforce, earlier Miniforce lines where they didn't have the helmets. And I do think that without the helmets, the heads look really tiny and out of place, but it kind of drives home the point of this is armor that the characters are using. But then the helmet does look cool. Problem is just getting the actual visor of the figure on the inside to line up with the visor of the helmet can be tricky, which again is why I've got Lucy's arms kind of jammed up in the, which you can hardly see, but they're like jammed up in there to keep the torso steady. So you kind of have to work it to get this thing to sit right. But for what it is neat. Moving on to articulation, the head does not do anything in this mode with the helmet down. The helmet simply flips down and flips up, that's it. You do not get any rotation at the shoulder, like I said before, which stinks. You can go out a little past 90, and you've got that problem of bringing the arm down, bringing this down, but you can go out. There is a bicep swivel just above the elbow. There is an elbow bend that goes 90 degrees, and unfortunately you cannot rotate the elbow very well with the elbow bent. When it's, well, with it bent fully anyway. You do also get wrist swivel, which is great because a lot of these figures, particularly the armor figures from this specific line that Croker comes from, they do the curling iron arms, and I hate that. So the fact that you can avoid that with Croker and Lucy here is really nice. Unfortunately, you do need to do it for the accessories, but we'll get to that later. There is nothing at the waist, but given how this thing works, that makes sense. There's the completely pointless forward motion on the leg there, and you can go back, and Lucy's leg will kind of, knee will bend with it, but again, what's the point of this? You can't actually do anything with the rest of the legs, so I don't really understand why this joint exists. As I said before, no in and out, you can just de-transform it to make it go straight down, but that's it. There's the reverse knee, so there's that. And then there is ratcheted ankle tilt. Now for the accessories, which I put off to the side earlier. We've got this thing, which is like a lance/sword, I think. I'm assuming a lance or something. This can just peg into the hand, as you would expect. And then this thing, which acts as a shield, pegs into the arm. Now, unfortunately, You would think you could just peg this in here and be done with it, but that doesn't really, like, it kind of holds-ish, but it's really easy to fall out. It just kind of sits. You'd think, okay, use the lower peg, and it sits, like, it looks like it's supposed to sit better, but it actually, it's even less in there than using the longer peg. Because what you're supposed to do is rotate the wrist around so that you've got these two pegs lined up, because the longer peg is supposed to go here and the shorter peg is supposed to go here. And this is how you peg the shield in, and it pegs in okay, but it's still, like, you can see it's hanging on there, but it's not that difficult to pull off again. I kind of wish that it pegged in better, either in the official configuration or in an unofficial one. Because when you peg it in like this, it does hold better, but now you've got the curling iron arm. And then you can kind of fudge it by rotating this so that the shield is facing forward a bit so you don't really notice it as much. And it does look cool, but I just would have liked to have a little bit more freedom with how to attach that shield. And I suppose if I really wanted to, I could thicken up the smaller peg and just do it that way, because that smaller peg does not factor into the alligator mode at all, so, or crocodile mode, whatever. So, I don't know. It's something I'm considering. But limited articulation and gripes aside, this does look really cool. Like, I do think that this mode looks neat. The crocodile vehicle, whatever mode, looks interesting. And having the extra little action figure is a nice bonus. And I think it's a neat concept. I do wish they had done a little bit more with the articulation, but it's a children's toy, and it's from Miniforce, so I get it. I'm not really expecting the world here, but it would have been nice. But even with my gripes, it does look cool. I'm not gonna lie, this looks pretty cool, and I am ultimately glad I got this thing. I was initially a little bit disappointed, but after having her in hand for a little bit, it is a fun little toy. And for once, when I'm referring to a toy like this, I do kinda mean little. She's clearly bigger than the Deluxe, but for the other figures from Miniforce and other Korean lines, this is pretty small, comparatively. Case in point, Tri-Hawk King, which is actually much, much smaller than Raybot, which Tri-Hawk King is pulled from, is still a fair bit taller than Crocker's Armored Up mode. And when we bring in Jaws Cop, you can see that there is a significant height difference. I mean, I know this is doing something very different from this, but it is a lot smaller than I'm used to with these types of figures. And let me readjust again. All right, and here she is with the duck tank. So that is going to do it for Miniforce Crocker / Lucy. And like I said, I've definitely got my gripes with this set, but I do think it looks cool. Love the colors. I think the transformation, aside from the particulars when it comes to getting that helmet in position for the armor mode and like getting Lucy in there. Aside from that, I feel like Master just crop dusted me, and it smells a lot. And she's gone. But yeah, this is a really cool, simple but cool set. It's a little bit disappointed at first, but I have definitely come around to it. But that is enough of me repeating myself over and over again. So what do you all think of Miniforce Crocker or any of the other Miniforce armor things that you might be aware of? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. If you like this video or any of the other videos that I've done and want to support the channel in addition to watching this video in the first place, I do have a Patreon. This is a single $1 tier that gets you early access to new videos, access to the occasional behind the scenes posts that I might do, and eventually I'm hoping to start doing polls. So if you want to have any kind of input or the ability to weigh in on stuff that might be happening in the channel in the future, that is an option. With all that out of the way, thank you everybody for watching, and remember, art is more than meets the eye.